Hi, I'm Tyson Franklin, and welcome to this week's episode of the Podiatry Legends podcast. With me today is Joe Sciortino. He is a Maltese podiatrist who graduated from the University of Malta in 2019. How are you doing today, Joe?
I'm well, thank you. Very early hours of the morning here in Malta, and yeah, I'm looking forward to this after 4 years. So, as you mentioned earlier before our recording, we did have that recording 4 years ago. It was pandemic time actually, and
It was, yes.
I, yeah, I did revisit it earlier in the week, and it brought back some good memories.
Yeah, it was funny, yeah, because you were on back in episode 116, and it was how first year graduates think. So I pulled a poll of new graduates from around the world and just thought about what is your thinking, because you had graduated and bang, straight into the COVID years. And I thought, oh, that
I,
was really interesting.
Yeah, if you don't mind me mentioning, I actually met one of the girls that was on the podcast.
All
I
right.
reached out to a good couple,
Yeah.
so a good couple of them in the group podcast of that day, and not to mention Blake, and there was a Scottish podiatrist as well.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I can pronounce her name well, but yeah, I met up with Kai. So when I was doing my master's in Leeds,
Yeah.
she was based in Leeds slash York, which they're only an hour apart up in North England. So that was quite kind of cool doing the podcast with you guys. And then I reached over to Kai and we exchanged ideas. And funnily enough, it was such a big coincidence that my social group at the time
Yeah.
knew her very well. And so she was part of it. And that was, yeah.
Yeah. What was interesting about it, what I say to a lot of people when they come on the podcast, a lot of people come on the podcast and they say, I don't think I have anything to say. And I go, you'll be surprised that your journey into podiatry or what you're doing in podiatry, yeah, it may not relate to a lot of people, but there will be certain people that will hear that and go, that has changed my life. That's changed my thinking. And then they will reach out to you and you'll end up connecting with these people. You have no idea who they are, but you end up becoming friends with them socially, through social media. But eventually, I said, a lot of people end up meeting each other face to face.
That's right. Yeah, it was incredible. And as you're saying, you always then diverge your own path with these people and your relationship with them, and you learn a thing or two, and you get to know them beyond the profession as well, which is you're making friends and lifelong relationships here. So that was pretty good.
Yeah, and I love it when I know a couple of guests have got together, maybe at a conference, and then they'll take a photo together and they'll send it to me. And I get
Yeah,
a real kick out of that because that's part of doing the podcast is in my opening statement, I usually say making you feel, see, and think differently about podiatry. And it's also just creating connections with everybody as well. But what you said to me when you graduated, when you're on the episode 116, was you graduated in Malta, but then you were heading to the UK to
right.
work in private practice and to do extra study.
Yeah. So at the time, I had just graduated from my bachelor's, and I always wanted to hold myself to the highest version I can be,
Yeah.
right? So for me, that meant putting myself in a bit of a challenging environment where I'm going to learn, I'm going to grow, surrounded by like-minded people. And I chose to do that by doing my master's abroad full time, which meant not working for a year full time, which I find that some people tend to see it as a bit of a loss at times, but oh boy, it was a very good decision and I enjoyed it. It was different because it was a bit more, I wouldn't say physio based, but it's sport and exercise medicine, which
Yeah.
isn't strictly in our, well, at least in the traditional sense of podiatry, it's not so overlapping in terms of our core roles and our practice, so to speak. But it was an enriching experience and I got a lot out of it. The
So where did you
facilities were
actually
great.
do the master's degree? Where did you do that?
I did it in Leeds,
Okay.
in Leeds. The very well connected. They had the folks from the Leeds United Football Club coming over doing the
Okay.
tests there, and which is Leeds United in the UK in England really is a very big football club, and they were on a rise at the time, not doing that well. Well, they're not doing that badly either, but I'm pretty sure they want to get themselves back into the top league. But yeah, really good. I learned a lot quite from it, and although it's not strictly what I do today,
Yeah.
because what I do is a bit more clinic based. It gave me another perspective of doing things, and I really enjoyed myself.
So once you finished that, though, you didn't go straight back to Malta. You went to South Wales.
That's right. Yeah. So I went to South Wales to work in a private practice, which I did. I was in contact with the owner probably a year before that. I did a visit. So
Yeah.
I visited the practice prior to me going to Leeds, in which is a practice in Penarth, which is in a few kilometers away from Cardiff, which is Wales' capital city. And yeah, I thought I was really impressed with the way things were set up, the multidisciplinary practice, the ambition that was set out by the team, that togetherness I liked quite a bit. So I told the owner at the time,
Yeah.
I want to work here and I'll be back in a year's time. And so I did.
I think it's really important what you said. I'm going to point that out, that I think when you first graduate, it is so important to work somewhere that, especially a good team environment. If you can have a great experience those first few years that you graduate, I think you'll stay in podiatry forever. I think if
Yeah,
you have a
I think
nasty experience or you're employed by somebody who is not the best employer, and sometimes you got to give them a bit of leeway if they've never employed anyone before, you realize they're learning as well.
yeah.
But if you're not getting fulfillment out of what you're doing day after day, you will get bitter and twisted and you will leave.
Yeah, that's quite insightful, and you must know a thing or two having interviewed all these people. So, but yeah, it was really good for me. I think that was my first aim as well. Even now that you're saying that, it's making me think that I wanted to work in the world of podiatry before setting out on my own. I don't think I was or am the type to be. I wanted my own business right away.
Yeah.
You got to learn the ropes and see what people do, and even learn through their mistakes. I'm not saying that everything was perfect and hunky dory, as they say in the UK. But yeah, it was definitely a good couple of good learning points that I took from over there.
I know when I graduated, I went and worked for myself straight away. And it wasn't my plan. I wanted to work for somebody else for the first couple of years. I just could not find a job that suited me. Plus, I was too scared to move away from my comfort zone at the time. I was on the Gold
Yeah,
Coast, Southeast Queensland, and I just wanted to stay in that environment on the Gold Coast. So the jobs that were on offer there at the time, there's probably some great ones there now, just wasn't what I was after. I thought, I'm just going to have to do it myself. Fortunately, I bumped into a guy by the name of Chris Wilson, and he took me under his wing, and he was on the Gold Coast as well. Never treated me like a competitor, treated me like a friend, took me under his wing and just taught me the ropes of setting up the business, doing certain things. And it was very helpful.
yeah. I think podiatry can be quite a small community, even in the UK. I don't think it's any different than it is in Malta. But as you're saying, I think you find real life mentors, right? Because I probably mentioned some of my online mentors to you prior to the recording, but these real life mentors that you meet along the way
Yeah.
were still are immense to me. And I think I'm one of those people as well where I want to feel inspired and I want to not let them down in a way.
Sometimes you just need somebody to just give you that little bit of guidance, especially if some people have imposter syndrome or they just don't, I don't know, have a good opinion of themselves in the
Yeah.
academic world. You just need someone to give you that little lift and nudge and say, you can do this. And when they prove that you can, you go, oh, okay, well, I can do it once, I can do it again. And then you become
Yeah.
unstoppable.
I had a bit of a similar um, journey in that sense because at the time I didn't do what in my secondary school years. I didn't do well academically. I was very average and I wasn't studying or doing it well at least. I was good at sport and that gave me quite a good sense of self-esteem. But I remember at the time I think I had this. I went to this extra tutorship thing where this lady literally taught me how to study through the
Yeah.
use of mind maps. And oh God, what a good investment that was. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
remember I took off after that. I said, oh, I can do this. It gives you a sense of belief. And I started doing relatively well after that. And I
I
still use
think,
those
yeah,
tools till this day.
I think you've got to find your study method. I know some people can pick up a book, read it, and they just remember what's in there by reading it. I find that difficult. I need to draw diagrams and pictures and dot points and I need to visually see how things work. I worked out pretty quickly. I'm a visual learner. Show me how to do something, or let me draw a diagram
Yeah.
on how it works, and I'll remember how it's all put together.
Yeah. I remember you saying that through one or two of the podcasts.
I have a couple of questions about podiatry in Malta. How many podiatrists are there?
I think I've been away for a while, but if I had to guess, I think there's around 120,
Okay.
130 registered podiatrists. But I worked it out once, and per population, I think we're a bit more saturated than the UK. Because I think there's around 500,000 people here.
Yeah.
And yeah, so there is a good number of podiatrists looking to rekindle my relationship with a good couple of podiatry friends that are in the profession and get amongst it again.
What made you decide to head back? You mentioned to me before we press record that your parents are doctors.
They are, yeah. Yeah, it was a hard decision to be honest, because I loved my life in South Wales.
Yeah.
I thought you're out on your own, doing your own thing, you're growing a lot, but I thought it was the right time for me to leave and start my own practice and be a bit more independent. I had more tools to work with, working with my parents, where I just could grow and develop a bit more and a bit more freely, and I could have my own identity. I think there's that. And my girlfriend's over here as well, which is quite a big draw.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And
Yeah. Well, there you go. Yes.
um,
There's a draw card. Did she go to the UK with you, or she stayed in Malta?
no, she stayed in Malta, but it wasn't a long distance through the whole period. I had gotten back together a few months prior to me coming back, so to
Yeah.
speak.
Okay. What's the flight time from Malta to the
Yeah.
UK?
3.5 hours?
Oh, it's nothing.
Yeah.
That's like in Australia, that's just going from one city to another. That's not a big
Yeah.
deal at all.
Yeah. Actually was in Australia, and I had quite a life-defining head injury at the time. And this was in Sydney, in a suburb called Glenorchy, where we have family over there.
Yeah. What year was that?
2008.
Okay. What happened?
Um, Yeah, horse riding injury. It was pretty nasty in some ways, the injury itself, but very life-defining in terms of what happened afterwards. And in some ways, I wasn't too well equipped to deal with it at the time, and even going through school. But yeah, I think it's been probably, it feels ironic saying this, but it's probably one of the best things that could have ever happened to me now.
So what was the life defining moment? What happened? Well, obviously it was a head injury coming off the horse.
Yeah, yeah. The life defining part is, or the change, as you
Yeah.
mentioned, I don't think there was a particular moment, but it knocks you off your trajectory, and it makes you think, oh, I've got this one life, I better do it right. I
Mm.
was close to losing it. Um, so I guess it fills you with a lot of gratitude, and and for me it was a lot of not messing about, doing it right,
Yeah.
surrounding myself with good people. I was 11 at the time, so I, I, um, I probably was a bit socially excluded as well at the time from friend groups at the time, and or at least years after. I felt also, I remember thinking that I can't have this normal pathway other people have, in the sense that I went off to study, go
Yeah.
beyond my comfort zone, leave my own home, and that spurred me on to do that and take my own identity, develop that, and yeah, just grow in my own profession, my beliefs, my reflect on what I don't do as well. So that was quite good.
So, but as an 11-year-old, though, you probably wouldn't have comprehended life as an 11-year-old. Was it more later years that you reflected back on that injury and went, I could have died? And then that it clicked in later years? Or was it as an 11-year-old, you went, I could have died?
I think it was a bit of both, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think as an 11-year-old, I think I didn't think much other than I remember thinking, oh, I feel a bit guilty of putting my parents through this, rather than because I had a bit of a mischievous behavior, and how I got myself into that is a whole other
Yeah.
conversation.
As an 11-year-old, when you got injured, was it your fault? Were you doing something you weren't supposed to be doing? Or was it just You went over a jump and you fell
It,
off
wa-
it.
it, wa- it was my fault. It was my
Yeah.
fault because, but I think I didn't know too well, so it's hard to say. But yeah, the experience itself was just reinvigorating, and in terms of just growing and even the way people perceive you over years to come. Yeah, I found that to be quite good for me in
Yeah.
many ways.
How long did it take to recover from the injury?
Probably a month or two. But
Okay.
honestly, Tyson, I never really felt I was quite lucky in the sense I didn't have any physical or mental repercussions other than being at hospital for a while.
Did you have a helmet on?
No.
Were you told to put a
Um,
helmet on?
no.
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 Okay. It's not your fault then.
So what happened was at the time I was running
Yeah.
after this horse. It wasn't a horse riding injury, and I think we were trying to put him back in his don't know what you
Stable.
call it, this pen.
Yeah.
And yeah, he kicked out and he caught my head on the side. So that
Oh, yeah. You see
um,
videos on YouTube about that sort of
yeah.
stuff, and on Instagram
Ye-
they'll show a video of some guy getting kicked, and you go, "Oh, that's gonna hurt." Yeah,
Yeah.
it's dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of horses.
No?
I'm not. Yeah, horses like when they come up to a gate, I give them a bit of a pat, but I'm not a fan of getting anywhere near them
Yeah.
because they're just so big and so powerful, and I don't know you can get injured just like what happened to you.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. And I haven't gotten back since, and I definitely need to get myself back over there. And so this was at a family farm at the time, and I still have very good relations with the people over there. And sadly, my dad's uncle, he passed away this year. And yeah, definitely want to get myself back over there.
Well, I didn't know we were going to get in that path. So I'm glad you shared that with us because, like you said, because I'm interested, like when you said it made the changes with you, do you feel that's what directed you on the path to go into podiatry was doing something a little bit different?
I I don't know if it directly relates to podiatry because for me, podiatry, I didn't think much of what I was going to do growing up. I
Yeah.
wasn't one of those, oh, I want to be this, that, or I had this of, oh, I want to be a mechanic or I want to be this. But you go through phases, right? I think podiatry for me was more. As I said, I was a sporty child growing up, and I loved it. I think I had a bit of an ego in it as well, as you do. And I remember my favorite footballer at the time, and still is, but he's retired now. Rooney. I remember he injured his metatarsal in 2006 before the 2006 World Cup, and I remember thinking, oh. Metatarsal. Big, nice, juicy word. Oh, okay, that's cool. Okay. And that stuck on, but I never thought podiatry at the time. And it was years after where I think I associated it with being quite like sporty in my mind and
Mm.
combining being a health professional, being independent, setting up your own business. So I thought that was an attractive proposition, and then I went into it. Yeah.
So podiatry in Malta, how is it viewed by the general public? Because in some countries, yeah, some podiatrists, and I know in the UK, and they've posted things in different groups where they go, oh, yeah, some of my patients just think I'm one step above a masseuse, but just underneath a hairdresser. And I suppose it's depending on how you portray your business as well. That's going to give people that. I always say, if you don't define your brand and who you are, then your patients will define it for you. So
Yeah.
how is podiatry looked upon in Malta?
It's, I think it's, as in most places, it's been slowly changing in terms of public perception and yeah, other perceptions of from others as well. I think for a long time we're still, to an extent, you're still viewed corn cutting or
Yeah.
nail trimming or whatnot, and there's still that perception to an extent. But as professions in the business, they grow and they develop, they upskill. I think perceptions do change as well. So I've come here with a lot of skills such as ultrasound. So I invested quite in ultrasound, and when you tell people, oh, I do that, I can image, I can produce a report, foot and ankle, plantar fasciitis, your typical MSK conditions,
Yeah.
that changes perception. So I think that's on you and to some extent to build a reputation for yourself.
But I think that's really important what you said there about changing the perception as well, because and this is what I meant before about branding. And if you don't define your brand or what you are, what you represent, or what podiatry represents, and you don't educate your patients on the skill set that we actually have, if the patient only ever sees you clip a toenail, then they're going to think you're a toenail clipper. And then they're going to go and tell all their friends, oh, down the road, there's the toenail clipper. But even if someone comes in to get their toenails clipped, and while you're doing it, you educate them about other aspects of their feet and ask a simple question like, Mary, so what were your feet like when you got out of bed this morning? You know, she might find that's an odd question when you're clipping her toenails, but it sparks a conversation and it lets them know that you do more than just cut toenails. So I think on the right track in Malta, the more things or skills you can introduce, that will change the perception of podiatry in that country.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I reckon it's changed quite a bit. But I think in terms of medical hegemony, I think maybe the your local GP is sometimes a bit more of a referral point. But I
Yeah.
think people are starting to realize and see us as more the foot and ankle experts we are, or we claim to be at least.
Yeah. So how would you say, because you worked in South Wales in the UK and work and seeing podiatry in Malta, how would you say the similarities between the two, and are there like vast differences as well?
I think there's a lot of similarities. Bit of a historical context that Malta was a British colony. So historically, we have had quite strong relations with the UK or the British Empire at the time. But yeah, I think even our university training that was based off of the British model and how they see podiatry. So
Mm,
podiatry here is a 4-year course as opposed to many courses in the UK, which is a 3-year course. I think that might be a difference. I think there's one in Edinburgh where they do it on a 4-year program, and then most of the other 4-year programs are in Ireland.
okay.
But yeah, in terms of scope of practice and what we do and how we identify, yeah, very similar. There are a couple of things that podiatrists here are fighting for, and namely, one of them is being able to inject steroid and to prescribe some antibiotics and some other medication that you are able to do in the UK. So that might be another difference I've noticed. But in terms of approach and that we have a centralized national health service and there's the independent private
Yeah.
sector as well, I think they were quite similar on that front as well.
So are most podiatrists in Malta in private practice, or is it majority in the government like health system, hospitals?
I think the majority do both. So the majority work with the government. They have probably their day job there, and in the afternoon slash evening, they do their own independent private practice work. Probably some podiatrists obviously work in academia, and but you get quite a wide variety in terms of their scope of practice, their identity, what they do, and how they view the world as well.
I take it you have a registration board there, I assume.
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
Can somebody from another country come to Malta to work if they wanted to? Do you have any idea
yes,
about
I
that?
think so. I think there was a Belgian guy who did that a couple of years ago. I'm not too sure if he's still here, but yeah, I it's definitely possible. It's a bit young podiatry. It's a bit country related, and you need to be approved by the board and all of
Yeah.
these things. So I don't think it's as clear cut as as my knowledge of it is. But yeah,
Yeah, well, I think most
I
countries, like the countries that I know from UK to Australia to South Africa, Canada, Bermuda, there's a lot of similarities between what we're doing. But yeah, most of them, they've all got boards and you've got to make
yeah,
sure that you're not a dill. Yeah.
yeah,
You want to make sure you tick all the boxes
yeah,
and that you're
yeah,
doing the right
yeah.
thing
So
and you've got
I
the right
think we.
qualifications.
Yeah, I think you can add Malta to that list, and because I didn't have much trouble starting to work in the UK, getting registered, other than the some of the bureaucratic process to that. But yeah, it was quite good. No, it wasn't really that difficult, and yeah, it was quite good.
Okay. So what are your future aspirations? Like where do you see yourself for the next 5 or 10 years or building your practice? What is it you want to really get out of podiatry or see what happens with podiatry in Malta?
What I want is to have my own practice, have a successful one, and I want to feel wholesome in it. I want to feel fulfilled in what I do, build a team quite lightly, upskill, connect with my patients, improve their lives, enjoy what I do, connect with other professionals as well,
Yeah.
and get to know a bit more of that in Malta. And just have my own identity as a practice, do the marketing bit right as well, and the branding side to the my practice because I'm working on that a bit as well. And I found that say my parents are a bit more old school GPs, and some of the ideas that I come up with, they tend to raise their eyebrows a couple of times. But yeah, I think that concept is quite new in Malta as well, but we're starting to see it a whole lot. Even pharmacy and pharmacy practices, they have their own clinics, and you tend to see the branding side a bit more, which is quite good to see. But yeah, that's what I want really, and maybe even give back and mentor a few other podiatrists along the way, and just be a positive. I try to be a positive influence in your own profession community. So yeah, that's what I want.
I think with the marketing side of things too, like your parents, you go back 20, 30 years ago, you graduated, you put a sign up, and there weren't a lot of podiatrists around. People just came to you. You could build a good business purely word of mouth. But I think these days, because there's a lot more podiatrists around, there's a lot more people that are encroaching on that the work that we would say was only podiatry work. Now, physiotherapists and chiropractors are sort of diving into that area. And I always say to people, if you look at your current patient load and you're not happy with the patients that you're treating day in and day out, then you need to change your marketing. That's what it comes down to.
So
Yeah,
if you don't mind me mentioning as well, you get these sort of small breaks in life, small
yeah.
someone's given you a chance, so to speak, and you've mentioned that, and that's reminded me. I think in the 2019 College of Podiatry annual conference, I got the brilliant opportunity of going and being an invited speaker.
Oh,
And that's
cool.
all because there was Professor Alan Borthwick, who was in Malta at the time, and I think I offered him a lift from
Yeah.
the conference to his hotel where he was staying. And you get these opportunities in life, and you just got to be aware and show kindness to people. And I think it all pays back. And that was another one where, oh, this is how podiatry is outside my comfort zone. And I had the lovely opportunity of going over there and maybe not doing such a great job of being a speaker, but I thought it was brilliant.
But you did it. And I think that's a really good point you bring up. I think sometimes podiatrists graduate, they go back into their shell, whereas you have to go to events, you have to do different things. And if there's an opportunity to help out, even if you go to a conference and you go, can I help in some way? Whether you're helping them set up, it's the connections you make, I think, early on in your career that make a huge difference. I
Yeah.
remember when I graduated, it was a year after I graduated. I was on the Gold Coast. I was sitting at a bar having a beer, and this young guy was talking to me. And he said, "Oh, what do you do?" I said, "Oh, podiatrist." He goes, "Oh, my dad's a podiatrist." I said, "Oh, I'll be buggered." And he was an American guy. I said, "Oh, who's your dad?" And he said, "Oh, Leonard Winston." And I went, "Oh, Leonard." I said, "Is he over at the moment doing all these tours around the country for Rockport?" It was when Rockport shoes were coming out. And he said, "Yeah." So anyway, his dad came down. We started talking. So then I said, "Look, if you need to be driven up to Brisbane, I'll drive you up there. It'd be easier, at least, because they were going to drive themselves." And I went, "Let me drive." And so I drove him to the Brisbane event, and then we stayed in touch after that. And it's because of that is how I made my connection with a lot of podiatrists in America
Yeah.
back in 1989. Yeah, I'm not that old.
Not that old, I think.
But it's just, I think it's being out there. It's talking to people. Like, even this
Yeah.
young guy that was at the bar, I could have not spoken to him, but just
Yeah.
being prepared to talk to people, you don't know who knows
Yeah.
who, that leads on to something else.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. I think that holds a lot of people back. But as you mentioned, and I think as you've been mentioning through your podcast, probably it's been a bit of a theme in the past couple of months. I've noticed that you've mentioned that you can learn so much through traveling as well,
Oh
as,
yeah,
as a podiatrist, and that was one of them. I think even with Kai, with one of the attendees of the podcast a couple of years back, we discussed a lot on volunteering in podiatry, and
yeah.
there's a group that goes to India and so on and so forth. I was going to do a South America one, and I was supposed to be there now, but I had to postpone it. But yeah, I even a couple of weeks ago, non-podiatry related, but it's just being open to opportunities. I went on a farm a couple of weeks in Ireland where it's a geese hatchery, so it's a geese and duck
Okay.
farm. And I was
Okay.
picking eggs early in the morning. I've got a bit of a farming background from my dad's side, and you see how a business operates. You gain another perspective. It's another learning curve, and yeah, it's being open and doing these things.
I've said that a lot on the podcast that whenever you travel, every town you go to, if there's a podiatrist in that town, if it's in another country, reach out to them before you get there and just tell them, I'm going to be in your town. I'm going to be in your country. Any chance we can have a
Yeah,
coffee? My shout. I've never had anyone say to me, no, I don't want to catch up with you. Everybody says
yeah,
yes. They do it all the time. And
yeah.
in my recent trip to the United States, I do the same thing. I reach out to people before I get there and you just connect with people.
Yep. Yeah, and I did that a couple of times in the UK as well, in different towns over there, and yeah, it was good. I remember even for my ultrasound training, you make friends and everything. And I flew from South Wales to Northern Ireland,
Yeah.
and I never had been to Ireland. And I got help over there with the ultrasound, with the ultrasound training. So we've got to be alive to these opportunities as well. It's about connecting with people.
It's also maintaining contact with the people that you meet. So
Yeah.
if you do connect with somebody, is then make an effort, even if you've got to write it down in your diary. Yeah, in 3 months' time, send a message to Joe just to say hello. Hey, how you doing? And just
Yeah.
it's maintaining that contact, even just a quick one-line message, whether it's through LinkedIn or through Facebook, and just maintaining that contact. Lets everybody know, okay, we're still alive. It's yeah, let's just keep that contact going. When we went
Yeah.
to Las Vegas, we went and did a Zappos tour. I don't know if you've heard of Zappos at all.
No.
They're the In America, they're the biggest online retailer of footwear in the United States. Amazon bought them a couple of billion or something years back. And they do tours. You can go in there, and they're renowned for having the world's best business culture. So
Oh,
we
right.
went,
Okay.
yeah. So I sent them an email and said, hey, we're going to be in Las Vegas. Any chance we come out and do a tour? They said, yep, not a problem. We came in, they had my name up on the big screen as we came in. Welcome, Tyson. I had my wife with me. And Rio, the guy who showed us around, took us all through these different areas and explained the different culture and the things they're doing. It just blew me away. And then afterwards, I grabbed Rio's card and then I sent him a message on LinkedIn just thanking him for the tour. Then we've
Yeah.
connected there. So we've been messaging each other backwards and forwards. And that, like I said, that's a connection that I will maintain because I really like the guy. He was fun. And the tour was
Oh, yeah,
fantastic.
yeah. Oh, amazing. Is it like a conference, if I may say? Is it like
No, you can contact Zappos and just go, can I do a tour? And they actually have tours that you can do at different times.
oh, I
But
see.
nobody was booked in on the day that we were doing it. So it was just my wife and I. And they showed us
Yeah.
through all the different areas and aspects of what they do in team building. And it just blew us away with how much emphasis they put on their customers or their team. They're
Yeah.
looking after the team, but it's free reign to the team. Whatever you need to do to make the customer happy, then that's what you do. And you don't have to ask permission for it.
Well, that's quite impressive, especially if it's a big retail company or
Yeah,
yeah,
massive.
whatever it is.
So while I was there, I picked up this book, Delivering
Is that
Happiness, Zappos. Yeah. So the path to profits, passion, and purpose. That's what it's all about.
yeah. Oh,
So
brilliant.
before we wrap up, what is the name of your podiatry business in Malta?
So the name of the clinic itself that encapsulates so we've got a multidisciplinary GP practice is Sciortino Health and Wellness Clinic,
Okay.
or Sciortino, and the offshoot is Sciortino Health and Wellness Podiatry.
Okay. So you're going to be working. So your parents have got a wellness clinic. So you're going to be working in there with them.
Yeah. So we've
Best way to
we've
do it.
rebranded a couple of years ago, and we're working on the wellness side of things. But yeah, it's it's taking shape. And as I said previously as well, I'm looking into invest into equipment at this
Yeah.
moment in time. So if you don't mind me asking you something,
Yeah.
what would be something you'd think about, maybe a tip when you're looking into maybe investing in equipment that is a bit pricey?
Okay. Good question. And I have answered this one before to other people. Is first thing, look at the price of what you're buying, whatever the piece of equipment is. Say it's $50,000. Doesn't really matter. So if you know it's $50,000, then go, okay, what am I going to charge this out at? So this is the thing. So
Yeah.
what are you going to charge the patient for whatever the service it provides? And then
Yeah.
work out how many of those patients do I need to see before I get my money back? So that's one
Yeah.
aspect of it. The other aspect is if you had $50,000 and you put it in the bank or some other investment, what return would you get on that money? So if you
Yeah.
take that same money, invest it in a piece of equipment, what's the return going to be based on the amount of patients that you'll see? That makes
Oh, I
sense.
see. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so it's two different ways of looking at it. You can look at what am I going to charge it out at, and how many do I need to see to pay it back if you want to get your money back as fast as possible. So it gives you an idea of how many patients you need to see. But I think the other aspect is if you took that 50,000, put it in the bank, yeah, at 5%, what's the return going to be every year? If you took that 50,000, bought some equipment, how many patients do you think you may see? So therefore, what's the return
Yeah.
going to be? And usually, if you
Yeah.
look at it as an investment, and how many years you have that piece of equipment, I think the other part too is every bit of equipment, look at what is the maintenance of that equipment. What's it cost to maintain it? And that's a
Right.
really
Yeah.
important factor because I know when people were first getting shockwave machines and they were great, you get them in and people weren't charging enough for that service. But then when you need to get the handle refurbished, it costs a couple of $1,000.
Hmm.
So you got to
Yeah.
take the ongoing cost of that equipment into account as well.
Yeah, and you got to see if the that service is available on a tiny island like Malta. So
Yeah, it needs to be. Does it? If it needs to get serviced, can somebody service it there if something goes wrong? How
yeah.
easy is it to get fixed up? The other part too is start talking to your existing patients and say, "Hey, we're thinking about getting this," and see what interest is actually there. Because if everybody goes, "I'm not interested in it at all," then there's no point getting that piece of equipment.
Yeah.
So this is what we did when we bought the laser for fungal nails. We were mentioning it to our patients. We're thinking about getting this piece of equipment. This is what it does. And the excitement from the patients was great. So before the machine even arrived, I think at the time we paid $30,000 for it, we probably had $10,000 worth of bookings already booked in or on our
Hmm.
list waiting to come in. And then we pretty much, I think it was like 90 days before we paid it off.
All right. Yeah.
That we actually got our money back. And that's part of whenever
Yeah.
you're getting a piece of equipment, you want to have a bit of a marketing plan prior to buying it, then another part of your marketing plan when it's ordered, and then a marketing plan. And once it arrives, how you're actually going to deliver it out. So
Yeah.
there's a couple of different moving parts to it.
Yeah. I think this overlaps with quite a bit that you've mentioned in your 2014 book. I remember, yeah, reading
Oh,
that, and yeah, all very good tips. And yeah, you got to think through these things, quite important. So to go into an investment with a plan.
yeah.
So
Because some people, they'll go to a conference, they'll see a piece of equipment, they get excited, they buy it, and then it arrives, and they go,
yeah,
okay, now what are we going to do with it? And it could sit there for 3, 6, 12 months before they really get the hang of what they're going to do. They could have spent that 3 or 6 months really planning it out. So when it arrived, it could go bang and they could actually be making money for it or providing their service the right way.
yeah,
Then it's a
yeah,
positive
and
aspect for them and also positive for
yeah,
the supplier. This is where the suppliers need to, I think, teach the consumers or the podiatrists. If you think about buying this equipment, have you thought about how you're going to implement it in your
learn.
clinic, market, learn how to use it, get your staff involved, get
Yeah,
everyone excited? And I think for the suppliers, it would be even better as well.
yeah. All this equipment as well. Even with how I am at this moment in time, I'm a one-man operation. I can
Yeah.
only handle so much, at least even in terms of learning, and the business is still in its infancy, and there's a lot of time and money to invest in early on. So we need to factor in that as well.
Yeah. Hey, have your parents mentioned anything to you about some of the words that you say? You sound a little bit British.
Yeah. I get a bit of stick actually from that, but I don't know. I think I'm one of those people where I hear something
Yeah.
and it appeals to me, so I take it on board. And I don't know, it's not one of those things where I feel it's fakeness or anything like
Oh
that,
no,
but
I know. It's just I think some people. My wife is like that. If she hangs around certain people with a certain accent, it's within hours or a couple of days. She will just start saying things the way that they say it, and then she laughs
yeah,
about it because she knows that she does it.
yeah,
So, no, it's only been a
yeah.
couple. It's only been a couple of times. Be a few words that you've said, and I've gone. I went, I wonder if your parents have actually picked up on that. I assume they would have.
Oh yeah, I get quite a bit of stick. Yeah, I get quite a bit of banter from it. Yeah.
So, if anybody wants to reach out to you and say hello, Joe, what is the best way for them to do that?
I've got an Instagram account of the clinic.
Yeah.
I've got Facebook account of the clinic, but even my own personal one, if they want to reach out, say hello, I think those two would be pretty good. I've got a LinkedIn account as well. If any of the LinkedIn users want to reach out to me, that'd be fine as well.
I'll put your details and your email address if you don't mind. I'll put all that
Yeah.
in the show notes. So if anybody wants to reach, just go to the show notes for this episode, wherever you're actually listening to this podcast. They will be there. And yeah, reach out and say hello to you. So Joe, I want to thank you for coming back on the Podiatry Legends podcast, talking about podiatry in Malta and also sharing some of your own story, which changed your life.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I enjoyed my time here with you, and a relatively avid listener, and I'm really pleased to see that you're hitting quite big numbers with your podcast.
Yeah, well,
So,
we're,
yeah,
geez, close to 350 episodes now. So it's getting up there. But it's
yeah,
fun.
wanna
It just,
wanna set up so prior to me leaving to UK, I used to listen to your podcast quite a bit in the car, so I wanna make that arrangement again.
yeah,
But
no,
yeah,
that's great. Okay, Jay. So thank you very much.
thank you.